Welcome back to Untaming Masculinity, the podcast where we tackle issues relevant to men and their journeys to reclaim their masculinity. I'm Dan, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host and good friend Brad. What is going on tonight?
Not much, man. Another day in paradise. Took, I think I may have mentioned this, but I started 75 hard again.
Yeah.
And just gonna see it through. Just gonna get it done. So day 9, surviving, feeling okay. Trying to pace myself with my workouts. I got my butt handed to me in jiu-jitsu this morning to the point where I almost wanted to barf. So that was kind of a key telltale sign I needed to dial back the walk this afternoon. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a little condensed week, so I think I've talked about this ad nauseum at this point, but I am heading up to New Hampshire this weekend for a backpacking trip that I'm very, very excited for. And been doing the whole weather watching thing on the hour lately to see what we're getting, because it looks like rain this weekend, but anybody who knows the White Mountains in New Hampshire knows that it's one of those places where if you're looking at forecasts anything more than 24 hours in advance, it's really kind of not worth the paper it's printed on. So by the time the guys hear this, I will have gone on that trip and come back, and I'm sure that there will be social media posts about it in that time. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. It's for those people who know New Hampshire, it's called the Pemi Loop. It's the trip that we're doing. So it goes into the Pemigewasset wilderness area in New Hampshire, and it's a 30 or 32 mile loop in the woods, and it hits 8 or 9 of the 48 4,000 footers in New Hampshire. So are you familiar with those at all?
Yeah, I mean, loosely.
Yeah, you've got family back on the East Coast, so I was curious. But for those that don't know, right, the New Hampshire's kind of known for these 4,000 footers. Most of them are all above tree line. For the most part, they're above tree line, because I know 4,000 feet doesn't sound very high for you West Coast folks. But the climbs up, we start at less than 1,000 feet, so it's still pretty good elevation climb, and it's pretty rugged. It's that rugged granite rock New Hampshire kind of climb, and we don't really believe in switchbacks or anything like that out in the east. So
just granite straight up a mountain.
It's pretty much just straight up a mountain, yeah. So it's fun stuff. It's some incredible views. We're hiking. Part of the loop is on this ridge. It's called Franconia Ridge, and it hits like 3 or 4 of the peaks. But it's this wide open above tree line ridge line that you walk, and you can just see, on a good day, you can see pretty much the entire White Mountain National Forest from it.
Man, I'm
excited, if you can't tell.
Can't tell. Never would have been able to tell. But yeah, that's kind of honestly what I wanted to talk about today. We're talking about various topics, and I just felt like it'd be a good idea to kind of riff on this concept of your trip, but also how men, we in general, coming back to the concept that we've touched on before, but John Eldridge saying that every man needs an adventure to live. And getting out, adventuring, getting yourself out in the mountains, doing something hard, doing it with a group of men, how that emboldens you, how that empowers you, how that just simply makes you better. I just felt like it'd be kind of a fun thing to just riff on that, because I know this is top of mind for you. It's going to be awesome. Something I thought at one point I could have gone on with you, but
yeah, you were supposed to go on it.
Life things happened.
We'll leave it that. Yeah, life happened. But I mean, to get started on that, we've obviously are in close communication during the week, and you've heard me over the last couple of months how I've kind of gone through a bunch of ups and downs, and this trip has been one of the constants that I've just kind of had out there on the horizon as something to keep me sane and keep me pushing forward, and kind of the cherry on the dessert, if you will. And it's going to be a hard trip, especially if the weather's not perfect. Even if the weather's perfect, it's a hard trip, but it's something that I'm really looking forward to. I'm going up with Andy Musser, who was on the call or on the show some episodes back, talking about his fight with cancer. He's a big outdoorsman and a good friend of ours. I'm going up with our friend Jake, who is a really awesome guy, and he's a fellow former masshole like myself. Not former, just relocated.
Yeah.
And then we're meeting up with a friend of ours, AJ, who lives in the area and has some guiding experience of his own. So it should be a good trip. It's a good group of guys, and it's definitely something that I'm really looking forward to, both from a personal physical challenge standpoint and a kind of a mental clarity, mental reset standpoint. You know, there's something about just getting out in the woods for 2 or 3 days and really just concentrating on putting one foot in front of the other and just, okay, where am I going to sleep tonight? How am I going to get water? You know, just the basic necessities and just being around a bunch of good dudes.
And you think about that, right? You're going in an area where cell phone service at best is spotty.
Yeah.
Your phone's more than likely going to be in airplane mode or off the entire time. You're going to a place where you might encounter, some physical trials. Somebody might get hurt. Somebody may roll an ankle. Things like that are going to happen. So there's this sense of just you in the wilderness. We call our show Untaming Masculinity, and this is essentially your opportunity to untame yourself, if you will, for a few days. You're getting out there.
You get some untamed things going on in your house right now.
Yeah, my untamed children are running around like absolute mongrels, just animals, dinosaurs. I don't know what's going on up there. But that's something that we try to embody, within, whenever we talk. You find us talking all the time about going outdoors, about lifting weights, about exercising and working out. You're going somewhere to kind of call back to what it really means to be a man in a very primal sense. Just you in the woods.
Yep.
And your mind.
Yeah. It's funny you talk about putting your phone on airplane mode, because there was actually a big discussion today on our text chain about how much we all can't wait to put our phones on airplane mode as soon as we step off on Friday morning. And just live that way for the next 2 or 3 days. Basically just have a camera and, the GPS. We do use the mapping features on our phone for some stuff, but other than taking pictures, videos, and mapping, I have no intention of turning on my phone. I told my wife that if something bad happens, she'll hear about it. Otherwise, no news is good news.
And what's so cool about it is you're thrilled about that.
Yeah, I'm so excited. But to the bigger point, going out and testing yourself, I feel like we're very repetitive on this topic, but it's so important at the same time. The power that being outside in the wilderness and challenging yourself has in your life. And I don't care if you're doing something like I'm doing, where I won't say it's a super exclusive trip or anything, because it's not. I mean, pretty much anybody who lives in the Northeast could do this trip. Anybody with access to the Northeast could do this trip. But somebody who lives in a big city maybe isn't going to get out into the wilderness like New Hampshire on the regular. But still, getting out into a park, getting out into a wooded area, whatever, get outside the city limits and get into some kind of nature. There's something about it that is just so relaxing. I went this weekend, and there's a little 70-acre spot up the road from me. It's this little hole-in-the-wall park, we'll call it, where they actually allow archery hunting, which is not common. Mostly archery hunting is further out east on Long Island. And I went there with the intention of just doing a little scouting this weekend. I ended up taking a 3 or 4 mile walk in the woods, little ruck. And I came out with in just such a good mood. And anybody who's been to Long Island knows that walking in the woods here, unless you're on one of the shores, it's not that exciting. There's no major hills that you're going to climb where you're going to get great views, unless there's one spot on the island where maybe you'll get a halfway decent view. But other than that, it's literally just walking in the woods. And a lot of times it's not even a wooded trail. It's sand. So it's tough to walk in. Your footing's uneasy, but still you're out in the woods. I'm walking around, there's signs of deer in the area. There's signs of other animals. And then there's also random stuff. I came upon, in the middle of this wooded area, I came upon 2 boats that had been discarded somehow in the woods. Don't know how they got there, but it's the event. What I'm getting at is it's the adventure and just the freedom to explore. Just provides you such relaxation, such kind of mental clarity. I did a lot of subconscious thinking while I was out there. I felt like I cleared up a lot of things in my head that I had kind of been going through without even really putting effort into thinking about them. I got out, and then the next time I had to deal with that issue, it just seemed like it was little more clear, a little less of trouble for me. I don't know how else to explain that, but I value that time so much, and I don't do nearly enough of it. And guys need to do that. You need to find your way to do it. I understand not everyone likes the woods, so get out on a bike, ride through the city, ride the bike paths in the city, go for a jog, whatever it is. I do think there's a lot of value being in nature and being removed from concrete and brick and mortar buildings and the noise of automobiles and trucks and stuff like that, and seeing nature. But just being outside in fresh air, there's so much value to.
Yeah, I can't disagree with any of that. And this comes back to something we talked about with Matt Reynolds last week. By the time this podcast drops, we will that episode will have been released, about this concept of voluntary hardship. Yeah, hardship happens in life, but it's really the voluntary hardship. And, he used that in equating to barbell training. But at the same time, he did say that could be anything. By choosing to go out in the woods, you're choosing voluntary hardship. You're choosing to do something difficult. And how freeing and liberating and exciting it is. And it kind of harkens back to something I went through last summer. I don't know if I may have mentioned this on a previous episode last July. I was going through a really tough day. I felt like this level of depression setting in, and I haven't necessarily ever been someone who's been very depressive. I tend to be fairly cheery and optimistic by nature. We all have our days, but for the most part, I'm pretty optimistic. And this day just hit me. It felt like the sky was falling, and I chose to get out in the woods by myself, nobody in sight. Absolutely, positively nobody. And I simply chose to hike up a mountain creek. Had rocks. I didn't want to take the trail. Trail was over to the side. I climbed up the rocks. I wanted to make it hard and difficult. It was tough. I had decent shoes, so I wasn't able to slip. But, if you're climbing rocks up a creek, it's no joke. And it was exactly what I needed mentally. Did all that depressive stuff go away instantly? Of course not. It was something I still had to work through over the next few days. But just the feeling of accomplishment, the feeling like things are going to be okay. That's exactly what I needed to hear. And I don't think anything else in the world would have given me that feeling if I weren't out in the woods. We talk about this all the time, but there's power in getting outdoors and getting in nature. Yeah, not everybody's wired to be in nature, but I would encourage you, even if you're a city dweller who cruises around on sidewalks, take some time to get out of the city, get out of nature. I don't care whether that's the ocean, the mountains, whatever that looks like, it will be worth your while. You'll feel, I don't know how to describe it. Like, how would you describe that feeling? Just like peace and purposefulness and
the term weight of the world comes to mind, but it's not really that. It's the pressure of society, I guess is the best way to put it. And by that, I mean, when I'm out there, it's literally just about the basics. I'm worrying about the basics. I'm worrying about my footing. I'm worried about where this trail leads. I'm worried about, do I have enough food and water? Do I have shelter if I need it? But that's it. It's really it. And it's just taking care of yourself, moving forward, and allowing yourself that space to create space between the problems of the world and your current existence so that you can simply be. And we don't spend enough time simply being. We're always doing something, moving forward, doing this, doing that. And yes, certain activities out in the wilderness can be, you quote unquote, doing something. It could be working towards a conditioning goal or something like that. But at the end of the day, when you're out there, and I don't care if you're, hiking, doing a 3-day backpacking trip, or you're sitting by the water's edge with a cooler fishing, you're out in a relaxing place in the beauty of nature, and you're simply just being. You've removed yourself from the daily grind of society, and you've removed the immediate pressure of life. And I don't care how gung-ho any of us are. We all need that at some point. We all need the ability to put the stressors down, do something that we enjoy, and find intrinsic value in the simplicity of it.
That was really well put. And something else I was thinking about as you were talking is this idea that when you're out there, you kind of realize how big and majestic and honestly incredible the world is. And it makes all of these issues that seem so magnified. You're thinking about work deadlines, and you're thinking about traffic that pisses you off, and you're thinking about that bill that's coming up that you're stressing about. And when you're in a situation like that, where you're free of that, it's just yourself, your mind, and God's green earth, for lack of better words, all that stuff is put into perspective. It's not really a big deal. Work deadlines, it can be stressful. But if you're able to just take a step back and realize, you know what? Those work deadlines, they're not the end of the world. I don't need to stress about every single element of my job because in the grand scheme of things, it's something fairly trivial. So I think perspective really comes when you're out doing something like that, helping you realize the important things really are what matter.
It helps you define the minutia.
Yeah, that's really
right. And I would argue that in our day-to-day lives, we get so busy that we have a hard time identifying or separating the minutia from the important stuff. This goes almost back to the conversation we had about Eisenhower matrix in terms of, the two scales on that matrix. But identifying the minutia in life and identifying the really urgent or important things in life helps us determine where we place our energy. And if you're able to remove yourself from the situation, preferably in a nice nature setting, and you go out there, you can really get that clarity by being removed from it as to what's important and what's just noise. And I would also make the argument too, something I wanted to hit on when you said God's green earth and these wide open spaces, it made me think about how different geographical settings can be. Like I'm going up to New Hampshire in the Northeast, which is very thickly wooded, very craggy rocks, very just thick, dense forests. If you're a hunter, even with a rifle, you're not making a shot more than like 150 yards in those woods for the most part. Whereas where you live, I've been out snowboarding in your neck of the woods in Colorado, not Utah, but
same
difference. It's so wide open. And even like the ski mountains or ski resorts are so different in terms of the way that they're the breadth and the height and just the openness versus in the Northeast, it's very trail centric and contained. And it's almost the way that the ski resorts are set up. And I'm going down a real rabbit hole here, but the way that they're set up is almost a metaphor for what I'm talking about in the sense of on the East Coast, it's very meticulous and very determined. Whereas I feel like when I go out snowboarding out West, I have a lot more freedom and a lot more openness and a lot more creativity allowed to me because it's simply like elevation change, snow. You figure out the rest.
Yeah, it is very different. And you think even to take it a step further with the geographical diversity, you go 3 hours south of where I am and you're running into hoodoos and arches and red rock and desert, painted desert landscapes, regardless of where you are. Like these challenges.
You go down to the Everglades in Florida, or you can go down to, out to Hawaii and the jungles, right? Like, I mean, you can get outside and we're lucky enough to live in this country where we have access to all these different environments where we can go explore. And I would challenge guys to do that. It's funny. We go on vacation with my family, and one of the first things I do is I look at where we're going and go, okay, what can I see in nature? What can I explore? What mountains can I climb? What trails can I hike? What things that they have that we don't have can I go do? Can I go? We went down to Florida, and I was all pumped to go on an airboat tour for gators.
Yes,
it's a stupid little thing. We took the family out. Everyone loved it.
It's awesome.
But it was something that's so different. But you're still, even though you're on a mechanized vehicle, you're still out in nature and you're in this element that's so different. And there's so much water, and it was really cool. But it's something that you get to remove yourself and just be in that moment. So
there's this. I've been thinking a lot about the concept of presence lately. Obviously the way I've been thinking about it is very much in relation to my family, where I need to be present in the moment. I was listening to a podcast that Ryan Mickler did with what was his name? It was about fatherhood, and they talked a lot about presence.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about. Yeah,
and there was this quote in there. It's like, you never know when the last time your kid is going to ever ask you to hold them, and it struck me because it comes down to this idea of presence, right? Like, what if that last opportunity your kid wanted you to just pick them up and give them a hug was a day you were struggling at work and you're on your phones hammering away on Slack or sending an email or getting in an argument with whoever on social media, and that moment would have slipped you by and you're never going to get that back. And this concept of presence of course, it's the family component is absolutely massive. But you think about these opportunities when we're in nature or when we're outdoors or when we're experiencing something new. How easy is it for us to pick up our phone and try to hammer away something? Like I was actually within the Iron Council, our battle team, the battle team that I'm on, there was a guy who was giving a lesson, and he showed the picture of LeBron James showing or getting the NBA scoring record. There's this picture of LeBron taking the shot and just the wall of people behind him in the crowd. Every single person, save one in that picture that was not on the court, had a phone recording it. They weren't present for it.
Mm-hmm.
They sacrifice presence to capture it for social media. And for all of us who've done that in the past, you think about when you're out in nature and you take all these pictures and you're taking these videos. Yeah, some of those pictures are great, but if you take so many of them, what do you end up doing? You look back at them and they don't hold that same meaning. You look back and it's like, oh, it's a good picture, but it doesn't mean the same as if you were simply just there and soaking it in. And I found myself over the last couple of years trying to be present when I'm doing these things. Yeah, I might snap a picture or two or three, but rather than take 40, I'm just trying to soak it in and accept it and be present. And that presence that's something you're going to look back on. When you're 75 years old, you're not going to look back on and say, oh, that photo I took. You're going to look back and say, that's how I felt in that moment when I summited that peak, and how I felt was incredible. And I'll never forget that. You'll take that to your grave.
So I think there's a fine line with what you're saying, because
Right.
I do agree with you that over-involvement in photo taking and that kind of stuff when you're out in the wilderness is something that takes away from the enjoyment of the moment. However, I do strongly believe that journaling your trips and being able to look back on them and remember all the stages of the trip in a good manner with those visual reminders not only helps you remember that time, but helps you remember why it's important that you're out there. And to that end, you were talking about being present and family and the importance of being present for your family. How often do we consciously make ourselves be present for ourselves? That is something that we always tend to put on the back burner. If we're going to be present for work, we're going to be present for our family, we're going to be present for this community and that community and this group. But how often are you truthfully and honestly present for yourself? And I can honestly say that being in the woods is the one place where I can 100% say that I am being present for myself. I can do it some places, some other times, but it doesn't happen nearly as much as when I'm in the woods and when I'm in nature in general. We'll just say in nature in general, but for me, it's backpacking, hiking, whatever.
Yeah. No, you're right. And there is a key distinction between, just blindly staring at your phone and capturing those moments and journaling them, because that comes back to, that was really well put, presence for being present for yourself. You think about that freedom that comes with that and just doing something for yourself. And it's hard for men to grasp this concept of thinking about yourself. It seems selfish. It seems inherently selfish that, I'm thinking about myself above my family or above my job or above this, that, or the other. But honestly, all of these things are lies that we've told ourselves. When in reality, if we can focus on ourselves and make ourselves right, we are much more capable and able to be there and be present for the things that matter, specifically our families. That also includes something like a career. But you're right. Like, you're doing something exclusively for yourself, for your betterment. And as you better yourself, by association, everything in your life that you touch from there will be improved.
Going back to the concept of presence, I've been thinking about that a lot too lately. And I've been thinking about this concept of being present for myself as well. And one of the things that I've been kind of drawn to is, why is it okay for us to think it's important to be present for everyone else, but it's deemed selfish if we show any inkling to be present for ourselves, to be conscious of ourselves and to be there to support me as an individual. I don't, the more I think about it and the more I go down this path, the more I'm realizing that in order to be present for everyone else, I have to first be present for me. I have to get me right. It's that whole browbeaten example of, the airplane with when the mask falls, you put the mask on yourself first and then everyone else. I can't be fully present for my family, my job, my communities until I provide myself with self-value.
Yeah.
And, going back to kind of what we started talking about, I find that in nature. I find that's the easiest place to replenish that and to fill my cup first so that I can go out and start filling others.
Yeah. I'm actually starting to hate that whole put the mask on yourself first and put it on your child example, because everybody knows it. Everybody references it, but nobody applies it.
Yeah.
It's so easy to say, oh yeah, put yourself first. And then something comes up and you find yourself bending over backwards to.
But we're brought up in a society where that's selfish.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're doing yourself a tremendous disservice. Like I'm sitting here and it's June, what are we on, June 6th? And I'm already beating myself up because I don't feel like I've been out in nature enough this year already. I'm beating myself up over it constantly. I stare at the mountains and I'm just like, why am I not up there right now? And then I have to ask myself the question, why? Why do I keep doing that? Why have I allowed that to happen? And there's this false dichotomy that I've established that I have to be present for my family. I have to be there with my family. Whereas if I simply take the time and just spend it up there, I'm going to be a better version of Brad. That I can come back and be there for my family. I can take my family up there, for crying out loud. There are opportunities that I've had for myself and to incorporate them that I've set aside at their expense and ultimately at my expense as well. And if anything, coming away from this conversation, I'm just sitting here saying, I'm going to get myself up in the woods in the next couple of days.
Yeah. I would caution you against, it's good to involve your family.
Yeah.
But make sure you're doing time with yourself too.
Absolutely. Man,
and it's a tough thing, especially when you've got a younger family like you do. It's a tough thing to pull yourself away from it. I will say that my wife has noticed after years that I'm a better husband and father when I get my time. If I get that time away, and again, it sounds selfish, but it's the necessity that we as men need to reset ourselves. When I get that time away, and I'm able to do thinking, and I'm able to do, and when I say thinking, like, I'm not sitting there hiking through the woods thinking about a specific problem. It's all subconscious calculations that are going on. But she will say to me, you need a trip, you need a weekend, you need an overnight, whatever it is, figure something out and get out of the house, go, because you'll be that better man when you come back.
Yeah, it comes back to, full circle, coming back to John Eldridge and the concept of finding an adventure to live. Yeah, of course.
Need an adventure, yeah.
Of course, spending time in the woods and the mountains with my family is great, but I'm not going to get that adventure that I seek and that I crave with them right now. Maybe when my kids are older, I can go take them on some wild adventure that really kind of satisfies that. But for me, I need to get out there and introduce at least a little bit of risk. Yeah. Something that's like, get that little pit in your stomach because you're nervous something might happen. It's thrilling.
Well, I don't know if you're this way too, but I find that when I don't take care of me and then I bring my family into these excursions,
doesn't work.
I get frustrated because I want that little bit more excitement than I can have when I have, a wife and two, not now, but two younger kids in tow.
Yeah.
Those little hikes where I'm just lugging tons of goldfish packets and water in my backpack are not being in the outdoors like I want to be. They're great. And I would strongly encourage you to also do that because that'll instill a love of the outdoors in your kids. And that's probably where I floundered a little bit. But you need Brad level adventures too.
Absolutely.
Not just family level adventures.
Absolutely. Oh, that's really well put.
So what are your plans then for the summer? What ideas do you have? I'm not going to hold you to specific plans, but what, in terms of adventure, what are you looking at as far as ideas?
So I want to go on some backpacking adventures. For anybody who's familiar with Utah, we have the Uinta Mountain Range, which is, up in the Rockies. The high Uintas are beautiful. A lot of these backpacking adventures up there are 10,000 feet plus. Yep. Hoping to get out there for a couple of those this year. Aside from that, to be determined. I would love to do something in southern Utah. We get down to do some slot canyons near Zion National Park or something. But the goal right now is to do at least 2 trips, and whatever else is just cherry on top. What about
That's
you?
cool. Sounds good.
After New Hampshire.
I've got this trip. I want to do a trip. There's a cool area to hike right where New York, Connecticut, and Massachusetts all kind of meet. There's some great mountains. I think I shared those with you last week or the week before. Just some really good views and a really cool, it's called Sages Ravine. Really cool place to camp. I have the luxury of living near where the Appalachian Trail runs through these couple of states. So there's good camping, hiking along that corridor, and then side trails off of it. And I'd love to get back up to the Whites again later this summer. There's a group of guys I know who are heading up that I'd like to join up with. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do it, but I need a couple of overnights. And I've already told my wife that I got to get back into this groove a little bit more, and she's on board with it. So it's just planning it. Andy and I have been talking for years about doing a canoe, fishing trip in the Delaware Water Gap. So Delaware Water Gap is the natural border between Pennsylvania and New Jersey. So just renting a canoe or getting a canoe and floating down for 2 days, fishing and canoeing, camping, and just having a good old time there. So a couple of ideas out there.
Should do it, man. What's holding you back from doing it? Trying
to just get the time right, Planning stuff with our good pal Andy is a little tough because of his business. It's summertime is his busy time. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going on this backpacking trip. I've got at least one more in the bag. I just planned a day trip up to Bear Mountain with I threw it up in the regional channel for us in the IC. So I'm going to lead a hike up Bear Mountain in New York, which is cool. It's a mountain up near West Point. It's got great views of the Hudson River once you get to the top. So you can actually see the city on a good day. And just stuff like that. Just get out, explore. I really want to get off the East Coast, but I don't think that's going to happen this year. Financially, I don't think that the travel is in the cards, more so because there's a couple of things next year that we want to do. There's a big family vacation, and then there's also a rumor of a rim to rim trip next year.
A rumor in my
neck
of the woods.
So that's something I would be highly interested in doing. I've never done a camping trip out west, and it's just such a different animal.
Arizona's a different animal, man.
Yeah. I've been to the Grand Canyon. I was about 7 when it happened, but I've never hiked down into it. I would love to do that one day.
It's the weather is it's interesting. Like it's beautiful. It's different. It's very dry, but it's even
the other thing that we're talking about, which is not like backpacking or camping related, is there's really good downhill mountain biking, chairlift type stuff around here. And we're talking about maybe doing a trip up to Vermont with a group of guys later this year and doing some downhill. And then there's great up near it's called Northeast Kingdom. It's up in like northeastern Vermont. There's great trails up there, and just checking that out. So who knows? It's definitely trickier when there's family and kids involved. So I want to do some stuff with the kids. One thing I was going to mention to you that we had a really good time with when the kids were a little bit younger, and I'm sure they'd still love it, is we found some river tubing. I don't know if that's big around you.
Oh, buddy.
But as far as like a family activity in the outdoors, you get on a river tube for the day, you go down, you have some lunch, you find a couple of rope swings along the way, a little swimming hole, whatever it is. And we had a great time doing that in New Hampshire one time. But I'm trying to do a couple of things like that with the kids.
Awesome. Love it, man. Love it. Well, I guess last question I have for you is there anything you're hoping to get out of this weekend? Do you have anything set out that you're hoping to accomplish or learn about yourself?
It's always a challenge when you go out. I haven't been on a backpacking trip now in 2 or 3 years. So it's always a challenge to get back into it and remember all the little tips and tricks that you kind of forget. So I'm looking to square myself up with that. And honestly, I'm just looking to finish the trip strong. It's not an overly ambitious goal, but it's not an easy trip by any means.
31 miles.
And I'm very excited to get out there, do it, prove to myself that I can do it, and get back. I used to have the goal, like 4 or 5 years ago of hiking the Appalachian Trail. And to be perfectly frank, I've realized that being away from my family for that long and sleeping in the wilderness for that long is just probably not my thing. I'm much better at 3 to 5 day trips. I enjoy, seeing my family, seeing my kids. If one of my daughters ever wanted to do the Appalachian Trail with me, that would probably be a different story. That would be pretty cool, I think, to hike from Georgia to Maine with one of my girls. But, I don't know how I got down that rabbit hole, but yeah, I mean, as far as this trip goes, it's just proving to myself that I can still do it and I've still got it, and that, the old man still has some miles left in him.
Yeah, man. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
I hope so.
In yourself.
I think so too, but.
And I know very few people who are more driven than Andy. He'll willy you across if he absolutely has to. But
I'm really looking forward to it.
Problem.
Jake and I had done a backpacking trip in Tennessee. This is probably 4 years ago now. And he and I had a good time on it. We pushed each other. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And, it's, Andy's a beast. For a short guy, he's a beast of a man. And AJ's no slouch either. So, AJ's got a lot of, mountaineering experience and military experience. So it's going to be a good group. I'm really excited to get out there with those guys.
Awesome. Can't wait to hear how it goes.
Yeah, well,
don't die. Don't get eaten by a black bear.
Gee, thanks. The black bears are
tiny.
Babies.
They're tiny. They're babies. They're
honestly
like oversized dogs.
I think I've mentioned it before. I've ran into so many black bears in my travels, and as long as you're not between them and their kids, their cubs or
they're fine.
Them and food, they want nothing to do with you.
They're fine. They're minding their own business.
They're cool to watch. It's the bears out your way that are more of a problem.
Not even here so much. We don't really have grizzlies. Like we still only really have black bears here. You've got to head north, Montana. Yeah. That's where it gets crazy.
Yep. Well, dude, that was a good conversation. I enjoyed that.
That's fun.
We want to thank all the guys for listening. We've got episodes like this coming up. Make sure you're checking us out on the website, untamingmasculinity.com. Find show notes for this and all of our other episodes, as well as links to our social media. Instagram is where we are the most active, so definitely check us out there. If you found value with the show, make sure you're giving us a rating and review on your podcast player. That's what helps us spread the word to other men and open up more avenues and give us more opportunities to contact people like the Matt Reynolds of the world and the James Purcells and all the Ryan Murrays and all the other guests that we've had. So make sure you're giving us those ratings and reviews. That really helps. And make sure you come back next week. We got more great content in the hopper, and we're excited to keep talking to you guys. Until then, we will leave you with just one question. What are you doing to untame your masculinity?